Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. And it's 10, can you believe it? And I have here as my very special guest today, Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I am doing well, Philip. Thank you for having me on for the 10th episode. You can officially, only for this episode, use both hands.
I know, and then after that, it's going to be trouble for me counting unless I start using toes. But
11, 12. Just move into the sign language.
That's okay. Yes. Okay. That's a very good tip for me. And that's something I want to talk about because you are someone who knows sign language.
A little.
A little bit. Okay. And you have experience with a whole community out there, the deaf community. Am I using the right term there?
Yes. Okay. The deaf community.
And so that is something I hope we can talk about first to some extent, because it is an interesting topic that I think has a lot of bearing on YouTube. Because there are ways that we can make our channels friendly to deaf people, friendlier to deaf people. If we just hear some tips from you, I think that would be great at some point. Perhaps we could start off with that, just so everybody knows, though. First, if you don't know Andrew's channel, Andrew, do you want to just say what your channel is all about, and then we can talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So, my main go-to gag is I'm just a professional weirdo who makes strange videos about books on the internet. But really, I do fantasy, some sci-fi, but mostly fantasy. I lean a lot into the self-pub community lately. I love self-published books. And so I kind of just run a YouTube channel where I get kind of a little high energy when I talk about the books that I read. I'm not your more analytical booktuber, but I like to talk about books that make me excited. So that's kind of my whole shtick, if you will.
Cool. And I can attest to the fact that Andrew does occasionally get excited about these books. It's been a real joy for me to get to know you, and especially through our read along of the Long Price Quartet. That was your idea, I believe, from the beginning.
It was. Yes, it was. I believe I had mentioned it in a live show, and you popped in with a comment saying, "Hey, do you want to buddy read that together?" Okay. And then it just kind of evolved from there of like, hey, let's bring in Nico. Hey, let's bring in Alan, the Long Price Prophet. Let's bring in Sarah. Let's bring in Zara.
Yeah. That's been a real fun thing. And we are going to be having our final get together.
I know.
So we're recording this on Saturday. The video will come out probably on Tuesday, but we are going to have, before this video comes out, we're going to have our final discussion among all of us, with the spirit of the Long Price Prophet present.
The spirit. He'll always be with us.
Yes, because Alan had some excuse about having to help a student or something. And
teacher excuses.
Teacher thing. Yeah. So it will be an opportunity, though, for us to have some fun talking about Alan while he's not there. So
we can theorize on what his favorite bits were.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We could do our best Alan impersonations. We'll have a fun time with that. But
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, though, I would like to hear your response to that question of mine, because it is something that I sincerely would like to know more about. How, in your experience, could we make our channels friendlier to the deaf community?
Well, so there's a couple things that go into it. So of course, YouTube has the caption features, which we were talking about before we kind of started recording.
Yeah.
And so, it's not the greatest kind of piece of software. It does its best. The way you can kind of help it is slowing your speaking, which I know isn't the greatest for everybody, but that's what that kind of faster speed setting, which I've been told people do to me to make me sound funny. Yeah, Alan watches me at 1.5 speed and just giggles the whole time, apparently. But you can slow your rolling, you can articulate your words. But another thing, I believe you mentioned this in one of the live shows for the Long Price Quartet, was the low context and high context cultures.
Yeah.
And the deaf community is I believe I'm using this correctly, is a high context. Body gestures, body posture, facial expression can convey and change an entire tone of a message you are trying to convey, not just on what you are doing with your hands. It's not all what's going on with the hands. The face is also involved.
Interesting.
And so looking and kind of researching what those kind of cues are can help convey a message better, along with the captioning where you speak slower and everything like that. I'm not saying you can sign in your videos, although I do occasionally watch certain videos where there is signing involved, just to see if I can keep up with my sign language, which usually the answer is no. Okay. But yeah, so those are just some things that can kind of help a deaf viewer better enjoy BookTube content.
Neat. And you also mentioned before we started recording, lip reading.
Yes, lip reading. So that's where it comes with the articulation and kind of over pronouncing words a little bit, like, making sure you're fully forming a word, kind of like that. Looks silly on camera. So I don't know how well that can transition into a YouTube kind of format. But if you are very expressive with your lips, that can also help.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely, as you probably know, comfortable with looking silly in videos.
It is what it is. I am very comfortable with it as well. It's just kind of what my channel evolved into, because I used to be, very nervous in front of the camera, and I would kind of just sit there. Everybody's not the greatest when they get started.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I always tell people about the glorious awkwardness of my very first few videos. Are just awful. They're terrible, but
it comes down to making a choice. I remember I was doing a tag, and it was a tag where I was looking at the questions and I went, these questions are kind of silly, so I can ham this up a little bit. And it was my first video to hit like 300 views. And this was back when I was like 150, 200 subscribers. So 300 views is a lot.
Yeah.
And so at that point I was just like, okay, so people seem to respond to the more hyperactive side of me, so I can kind of lean into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I am a typically high energy person, not all the time, because nobody can sustain that all the time.
Oh no.
But
except maybe Alan. I don't know.
Alan probably could.
Even Alan has his down times. Yeah, no, it is something I think that most of us realize, that you do need to be a little more animated perhaps than you would normally be when you're filming a video.
Absolutely.
So you realize that if I just carry on making videos with my ordinary everyday conversational tone, those videos are pretty drab.
Right.
So yeah, you do need to. And this goes along with what you were saying about making your videos friendlier for the deaf community too, articulating and taking your time to pronounce things clearly, enunciating and all of that. These things are all actually good tips in general, I think, for making stronger videos that are more engaging, because when you are a little subdued, it comes across as really subdued on camera. It comes across as kind of boring, actually.
Well, and a viewer can tell if you're uncomfortable and you haven't quite found your stride yet. And I mean, all the tips that I gave are still things I need to work on. I still stumble on my words. I still talk sometimes too fast. I'm very rarely enable captioning, even though I probably should. It's just all things that, even though I'm giving the advice, it's things I can work on to improve my own channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just kind of having the discourse to realize, that you can always improve and you can always strive for more.
Oh yeah, that is for sure. It is a continuous effort in improving. Like we said, go back to our first videos and hopefully people will agree they're a little better now than they were.
I think mine's privated.
Is that right?
Yeah. I had a previous filming location where I was like upstairs. I had my tripod on a bar stool, it was like a ring light. The ring light was in my glasses, but I was in my bedroom. And so you can tell I've got this single shelf, and on either side, it's like dark and just dingy, and it's not the best kind of situation. And so then I moved down to my office where I had more bookshelves, and I keep accruing or accumulating, I should say, more
Either way.
bookshelves. Yeah, accruing, I guess, is the correct word.
It's fine. Yeah. Yeah, that BookTube does have a way of making you do that, doesn't it? Yeah.
It really does. I started with one shelf. I started with one shelf in my house, went to two to four, and I'm about to add a fifth, I think.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, so let's talk some books then, I guess.
Yeah.
We brought up that. What are you reading right now?
Well, I just finished We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor, which is a kind of self-pub BookTube darling, I should say. It was popularized a few years ago, I think, by Daniel Green.
Okay.
And it's one of the bigger ones, like, Cradle and stuff like that. That's got like 76,000 reviews on Goodreads or ratings on Goodreads. So wow. It's fairly big, and it had some really great ideas for a sci-fi, that kind of along the lines of Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Okay.
And then, but it injects more modern pop culture and humor and stuff like that is kind of missing from Children of Time. And also it doesn't have quite the same ideas. So it's not like a carbon copy or anything like that, but it was a decent read. I gave it four stars. I know you don't like stars.
It's not that I don't like them, but I don't use them. Yeah.
Fair. And then I'm also reading Of Honey and Wildfires, which is a self-pub fantasy Western with LGBTQ overtones to it as well. Yeah. And I love it so much, just from the fantasy Western kind of setting, because it just works. It takes that whole kind of gold rush aspect, and then instead of mining the gold, they're mining the magic.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of uses the same themes that transfers very well. Like, all of this magic is one area that's controlled by this single company, and everybody who lives within this area is kind of bounded or kind of zoned in and indentured. And okay. It's a fascinating thing, because I never thought fantasy Western would be something that would excite me. And I went and bought a whole bunch of fantasy Westerns. So
cool. I guess Dark Tower sort of qualifies in that. Or...
Yeah, the Gunslinger would definitely probably qualify. I'm still not quite done with Dark Tower. I'm on Wolves of the Kala this month.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I just finished it recently myself. Yeah.
I just 2 days ago finished Salem's Lot, and I realized that there was a carryover character, and so I wanted to make sure I had Salem's Lot in the bag first before I moved on to Wolves of the Kala.
Yeah, I did the opposite. I decided not to read Salem's Lot first. And I knew going in, because I had been warned by a lot of viewers that a lot of Salem's Lot does get spoiled by Wolves of the Kala. And I'm like, you know what? Stephen King spoils all his books anyway. So, and plus I'm somebody who's very spoiler tolerant, relatively speaking. For somebody on BookTube, I know there are a lot of people who just don't want to go anywhere near a spoiler. Like it would scald them if they went even close to it, but I'm fine with it, really. So
I don't tend to mind minor spoilers, like, oh, this character appears in this book, so obviously they have survived the breadth of time. I don't mind that kind of spoiler, especially if it's a character I enjoy.
Yeah. If
it's like a major plot line, I think that might get me a little irritated.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy.
In this case, you'll find, but I'm not sure because I haven't read Salem's Lot, but it seems like from reading Wolves of the Kala that King summarizes good chunks of Salem's Lot in Wolves of the Kala.
It was a delightful experience for something that came out in 1977. I think it has aged incredibly well.
Yeah.
Especially, it's funny. So recently we went to a celebration of life for my wife's grandfather.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And it was a 2-hour drive, and I live in Indiana. But I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I live, in the city, and so that's kind of my culture. That's my awareness of my surroundings. And as we were driving to this town that was 2 hours out, we passed. I swear we passed towns that were stuck in the 1950s. And to think that that's still not 2 hours from me, actually not even 30 minutes from me, that America still exists. On the lamppost down Main Street was, hometown heroes, military hometown heroes, banners hanging from these light posts. And I was just like, King's worlds, or the books and settings that King wrote in the 50s and the 70s, that still exists. And I think for a city boy like myself, it never really clicks. Like to me, it's like, oh, it's a slice of history, slice of life from a bygone era, but it's not. It's still happening. And I thought that was so cool.
Very cool. Yeah. I've been to Indianapolis, by the way.
Have you?
I have a very, very dear friend who from
It's me. School. I'm the dear friend, right?
Of course you are too. But this is a guy I've known for a long time, since grad school. Okay. So, and he lives in Indianapolis these days. And I went there, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago. But it's a nice town. It really is.
It's very nice.
Did not realize how cool Indianapolis is. It's a really great place. I found myself really admiring a lot of it's just got a nice vibe to it. Very friendly.
We call ourselves Naptown.
There's some nice artsy parts of it too. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. It's a great little spot. Did you grew up in?
Yep, I'm born and raised.
Okay.
Never really been away. Well, I mean, I've gone on vacation and stuff like that. Like I've traveled internationally, but I've never moved. Like I went to college here. I met my wife here, everything like that. So.
Okay. Which makes you, what do they call it? People from
Hoosier.
Hoosier. Yeah. I'm Hoosier.
Yeah, I'm a Hoosier.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we've mentioned a couple books, but I want to go backwards in time a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And one thing I always do when I do Dear Dr. Fantasy is I want to get a sense of where my guest comes from in terms of their reading heritage. Because I have this theory, and I'm sure it's not just mine, but I have this feeling that in some ways we are the stories that we have encountered during our lives. They are all in here somewhere, right?
Yes.
And they're all jumbling around in there, right? So to get a sense of a person, I think one nice way to do that is to find out what their reading journey is, because we're always doing things like making top 10 videos and all of that. Our current favorites are, and that can change from time to time, but one thing that never changes is the books that formed you, those stories. So I'd be very interested, if you don't mind, in taking us back all the way to little Andrew toddling around, reading his first books. Or what are some of the formative things for you in terms of stories?
Well, it's funny because I actually just recorded a video on this yesterday.
Perfect.
Of my, my childhood top 10, because, and I talked about that kind of in the same manner. So it's kind of fresh in my mind, so it helps. But it's funny because I come from a very strange family. Like I come from very blue collar and very white collar. So my father's side was very blue collar, and then my mother's side was very white collar. And so it's very two interesting parts that usually wouldn't fit together. But my mom, my grandfather comes from very high learning. He used to be a headmaster at the New York School for the Deaf and things of that nature. Like he's very, very learned, used to be politician, advocating for deaf rights and things of that nature. So reading and education was always at the forefront of my development. And so, but again, me being little Andrew, I was very hyperactive. And so I would break things, which required punishment. My punishment was go sit in your room and read this book.
That's a punishment?
That was my punishment. Now, when I knew I was in trouble is when they took the books. That's when I knew I was in trouble. And so some of my most formative series, I remember, this is going to sound silly. Early on, it was C.S. Lewis, the Chronicles of Narnia. That was, my family was very religious, but also they weren't willing to deny me fantasy. And so C.S. Lewis was the kind of the chef's kiss right there.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
And then the Magic Tree House, and I forget the name of this author, but basically it's a set of like 60-page kids books. And it's this brother and sister who wander into the woods and discover a magic tree house, where it then takes them all throughout history, like, the Knights of the Round Table. They can go visit dinosaurs, ancient China, things of that nature, to kind of like, just explore little tidbits of the world and little bits of history. So that's kind of probably where my love for Doctor Who comes from.
Oh, cool.
And then at 10 years old, I remember getting a paperback copy of The Hobbit. It was it was that black cover with like a really rotund Bilbo with a mop of black hair and this just ugly looking golem on the cover.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, you know exactly which one I'm talking about. And I read that thing until it fell to pieces. So that was kind of my introduction into epic fantasy, if adult epic fantasy. And then from there, I kind of discovered sci-fi through Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. Yep. My uncle had been a Navy man, and I believe at the time, military personnel were encouraged to read Ender's Game because it had so many battle tactics and things of that nature. I don't know if that still holds true or if I'm just misremembering, but he gave it to me and said it was one of his favorite books when he used to live with us for a while. And as it was kind of his moving out present was, here's a copy of Ender's Game. Oh. And so I dived into that. And then of course at 18, I was probably just discovering Dresden Files and things of that nature.
Okay.
So I've been reading Dresden for going on 14 years.
Wow. Yeah. I just recently started, well, maybe 2 years ago, and I'm only 4 books in. So I haven't been reading it very fast.
They're nice little popcorn urban fantasy things that you can really dig your teeth into.
Yep.
I've been recently advocating for Alex Verus by Benedict Jaka.
Okay.
For urban fantasy. It's got a little bit more politics. It's got a little bit more good, black, white, and gray elements. It's got, and it's completed. So it's 12 books and it's completed.
Cool. Are there any other books that you consider absolutely foundational to who you are in terms of, just what doesn't even have to be fantasy. Well, it could be anything.
One of the series that I'm not proud to have read, but it was fantasy and it was foundational for me. There's 2 series. We'll talk about the one I'm not super proud of. But it's Piers Anthony's Xanth novels. I read the first 12 of those. They're very campy, very tongue-in-cheek, kind of punny. Yeah. The fantasy world is Florida.
There's a place for that. That's yeah. It can be fun. Yeah.
There was just something campy about a young boy who still thought girls were icky. Where if you see a girl's underwear, your vision goes fuzzy and you pass out or you get a nosebleed. It was an integral part of the series. There's actually an entry in there. I'm not going to say the actual. It's the color of her underwear. We'll go that way. Okay. And I don't remember the plot of this book. I don't remember. I just remember the title. And
it's a pretty salient detail, I would say.
Yeah, it is a thing. But I mean, they had centaurs, they had naga, they had a lot of the fantasy creatures that giant spiders that usually kind of get left on the back burner. Usually it's orcs or goblins and things of that nature. And the naga usually don't get a whole lot of that's more like Homer style kind of Iliad stuff, if I remember
they
correctly.
Originally are from South Asia. Naga is a very South Asian thing. But okay. Yeah.
And then Dragonlance. I really loved Dragonlance as a kid.
Okay.
I would go to my mother would take me to the public library where they had these what were they? It's like a summer reading competition or fair where they would give you this little punch card.
Okay.
And then depending on how many books, if you filled it up, you could win little tchotchkes or prizes and things of that nature. Yeah. Little book flashlights where you push the button and it would coolly unfold and it'd break in 3 days. Those things. Yeah. And I'd always fill out my card, but they had a great selection of Dragonlance there. And so I read those. And then the only non-fantasy to transition really quickly before I forget would be Clive Cussler's Dirk Pitt books.
Okay. Yeah.
I loved something about an oceanic thriller. It always had this ocean element. There was something very compelling and mysterious and enchanting and terrifying about the ocean.
Oh yeah.
And to have a character, and the more I think about it, the more Dirk Pitt makes absolutely no sense. The man's credit card debt had to be absolutely wild because he lived in an airplane hangar that was full of like 1930s, 1920s, 100,000 to $1 million vehicles that he's been repairing. And it was a fleet. Well, Clive Cussler, the author himself, had this.
Oh, wow.
There's a car museum dedicated to Clive Cussler after he passed. Actually, while he was alive, he still had this, but I think it's been maintained after he passed.
Oh, wow. Huh.
And there was just something really cool about it. And of course, Dirk Pitt always got the girl. So that was always fun as well.
Of course. I mean, that's just par for the course, right?
Yeah.
So cool. So what then, if we've covered
we've covered quite a few
foundational stuff. Okay, good. So what do you consider nowadays to be some of your very favorite reads in the genre?
God, that's such a difficult question to ask.
Loaded question. It's a loaded question. Yeah.
Well, because it's weird because, I haven't read Lord of the Rings in a long time, and I know you a huge Tolkienite.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I remember watching one of your older bookshelf tours, and you had just this whole shelf of just Tolkien literature.
Yep.
I distinctly remember that.
Yep.
And so I still consider Tolkien to be foundational for me, but I don't know if I consider it a top 10 anymore. Obviously, for me, my top two, very recently, the top two, the number 2 spot very recently is Robin Hobb.
Oh, Realm of the Elderlings.
Realm of the Elderlings. I am reading the final book this month.
Oh, brilliant. Wow. Yeah. So that I don't no argument there. I think I put her at number 3 or something, but I mean, she's brilliant, Yeah.
And going back to, like I said, whenever I'm making my brain do work, I always forget something. One of my foundational series was Wheel of Time. It's like a pillar of my channel, and I forgot to talk about it. That still holds my number 1 spot.
Okay.
I just absolutely love Robert Jordan's writing and how descriptive he is and how intricate he is with his cultures and his world building. Yeah. Whether or not it's flawless, it's not flawless. But
nothing
for me,
is flawless. Nothing is flawless.
For me, it's foundational. I started reading it when I was 13.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So it's been a long time. And so that still holds the number 1 spot. Butcher as an author probably holds one of my top spots, mainly because I've read Dresden so many times, and I've also read Codex Alara, his Cinder Spires, which he still needs to crank out some books on. He's only still done the first book there.
Yeah.
I could probably do favorite authors over like my top 10, but like Drew Hayes is a self-pub author that not a lot of people talk about. Mainly because within our corner of BookTube, it's more fantasy based, and he does like superhero, he does supernatural, he does D&D based stuff. Okay. I've probably read 19 or 20 books by him.
Wow. Huh.
There's a lot of, like, Daniel Barnett's Nightmare Land Chronicles is a recent addition that he is probably what got me back into horror. Okay. It's just a set of novellas. If you've ever talked to Leslie's probably mentioned these. He's fantastic to interact with. And then, of course, recently Stephen King has muscled his way back into the list. Nice. I just, within this year, The Stand, It, Salem's Lot, Drawing of the Three, The Wastelands, all top, later, all top reads for me. I'm not quite as big on Wizard and Glass as everybody else is.
I loved that one. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, like, I mentioned it on Mike's channel.
I've heard you mention that it wasn't your favorite.
I think it was because I did the audiobook. And there are certain elements that Frank Muller, the narrator, just kind of elevates that just gives me the willies. Like it just icks me out. I don't know how else to mention that. Riva, is that her name, when she like licks her cat? These things like
Rhea.
She'll just like lick her cat, and I'm like, why? Like, what purpose did that serve? That you licked an animal for? I don't know. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there's like these.
I think that's the effect that King was going for, though. So,
and it icked me out. And so, I mean, he succeeded, but it kind of, I liked the character arcs and I liked the story elements. It was just those ick moments that I was just like, why?
Well, that does come up once in a while in King. I'm curious though about your Wheel of Time experience. So it's still your current, like this is not only informative, but it is actually still also your favorite series of all time.
Yeah.
And you're an excellent company in that respect. But how many times have you read the series, just out of curiosity?
It's kind of like Alan's Adventures with Malazan. So I've read the first book like 9 times.
Wow.
I've read Eye of the World like 9 times.
Okay.
And I'm currently making my way through a reread. I'm on Fires of Heaven book 5
Okay.
this month. But I've probably read the final book, I think, twice.
Okay.
So the final 2 only a couple times.
Right.
But mainly because I was very upset.
Memory of Light is the last one, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
When Robert Jordan died in 2007, I was very upset. And so I didn't know who Brandon Sanderson was.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know anything about Brandon Sanderson. And I was unwilling to take the chance to read Wheel of Time written by another author and not have it live up, which is, of course, silly because Harriet, his wife, was obviously making sure everything was up to snuff.
Yeah, she was on board. Yeah,
she was on board. And it was just me being a teenager because I was only 17 at the time.
Oh, okay.
And so it wasn't until I think 2016 that I decided to read those final 3 books. And so I've read The Knife of Dream at least 4 times.
Okay.
So I've read it quite a bit.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. So it's a series that I have read through once, and I had no problem getting from book to book. I think when I started reading it, the last 2 books maybe were not quite out yet. And I remember distinctly timing it just about perfectly and reading the last book right when it came out, which was what, 2009 or 10 or something like that, 11. I can't remember.
I think 2011 is when the final book came out.
Okay,
I think so.
So it's been more than a decade.
Or is it 2013? Now I want to look it up.
Well, we'll no doubt someone will tell us in the
someone will let us know.
Comments. But it's been at least a decade, I think, since I finished the series, and I did read it straight through. I was reading it along with my older daughter. I was an adult when I read the series, so I think I experienced it differently as a result. Obviously,
yes.
It's definitely a series that I feel like, because I'm too old. It was I was done with high school even when the first book came out in 1990, I think.
1998. The series is 1 month older than I am.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I had finished high school then. So I was a bit older, and I didn't read the series until much later. Like I said, I think there were still maybe 2 books still to come out when I started, and maybe even just the last one. I can't remember exactly, but I do remember distinctly being able to read the last one right when it came out. It's a series that I have a huge amount of respect for because of what you said. I agree entirely. It's just the vastness of this achievement is tremendous. And it is a world that obviously people enjoy getting lost in. I think also I believe the character arcs are pretty tremendous. If you look at the characters in Eye of the World and you compare them to Memory of Light, where they are,
it's very different.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite something it's an epic in every sense of the word. Yeah.
And in world of the Wheel of Time, only I think 3 or 4 years have passed.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
they are in their early 20s by the conclusion of that story.
Interesting. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to say that, but I believe you would. So, but yeah, that's cool. It's a tremendous series. Like you said, I do think it has some flaws, but what series does not have flaws, And
it was one of those series that started out, it was either supposed to be like a trilogy or a 5-book kind of thing, and then so the problem is I think Robert Jordan just let the series get away from him.
Well, I think one problem is it was highly successful, and there was probably pressure from somewhere to say, "Hey, could you maybe churn out a few more of these books?" And
it's entirely possible.
Hence the slog, perhaps, is what people refer to it as. Although I have to be honest, I didn't really experience it that way. But anyway.
So it's kind of fun when talking about the slog, because everybody experiences it a little different. Some people say it kind of different where it starts.
Yeah.
The main thing that people are mad about with the slog is Robert Jordan has a tendency, which you may not mind this as a Malazan fan, to just leave a character for a book or two.
Yeah.
Just leave them and kind of sets them on the shelf and focuses on other characters that readers may not care as much about, but he's filling out these backstories and giving you a more richer experience. It just may not be the experience that you are wanting, because you still want that character that has been left on the shelf to come back.
Yeah.
And so some of the slog, specifically Winter's Heart, if I remember correctly, follows some characters that maybe didn't need to be expanded on quite as much.
Yeah.
And so that's where a little bit of the bitterness of, like, people are like, why are we following these characters? It's compelling storytelling and it's compelling world building. It's just not the characters that you have fallen in love with.
Yeah, I never experienced that. I'm always willing to go where the author's going, and I figure that interesting character is going to come up later. Every big series has that. Look at what happened with A Song of Ice and Fire. People were mad because he split the books 4 and 5, and then certain characters like Tyrion or whatever, John, whatever, weren't in this book, and people are like, where's this character? Every single series has that if it's a big series, and I think it's just necessary. But
well, and that's kind of the brilliance of Robin Hobb that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
is we get this initial
trilogies. Yeah,
we get this initial Farseer trilogy where we're following Fitz, and then the next trilogy is not Fitz. Right. It is the Live Ship Traders, and then we come back to Fitz. He's been set on the shelf for a number of years or a number of books.
Yeah,
and it's great. And then of course, you get the Rain Wild Chronicles. It's not really my thing, which is why it didn't unseat. For me, Rain Wild Chronicles is the reason it did not unseat Wheel of Time for my number 1.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
It's one of those things where again, the publisher got involved, I think. And so, like, using the Hobbit movies as kind of a reference point, the Hobbit did not need to be 3 movies.
No.
Was it a trilogy or was it a duology? I don't remember.
The movies they made into 3. The Hobbit they made into 3 movies.
Right. So 3 movies. It's that thing where
you're talking about the Peter Jackson.
Yes, the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3. Initially, it was supposed to be 2, and then they turned it into a trilogy.
3. And the third film is basically a one long battle sequence.
Exactly. And so that's kind of what happened here with, in my opinion, obviously I do have people who disagree with me, is what happened, because it was initially supposed to be 2 books, and then it got turned into 4. So
okay, that
brought down the quality for me quite a bit.
Rain Wild was supposed to be 2, and so you think the publisher had some influence there, and maybe saying let's get 3 more books out of this. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we don't know. I mean, stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and maybe Robert Jordan was very happy to keep writing all those books and keep being in that world. I can understand as an author, but enjoy spending time in the world he's created as well. For sure. And another thing that I like about that series, actually admire, is I feel, and sometimes people do criticize Jordan's prose, I think he can be incredibly poetic at times. Like, if you look at even just the names of those sword forms are like,
I was just about to mention that.
They're like haiku, they're just wonderful. I love that. His descriptions, I sometimes, I'm somebody who really does like to pause and admire good prose. And I think he has some really great heights in his writing. So there's a lot to love about that series for sure. So absolutely. Yeah. And it's a series that I think it deserves the respect. It doesn't have to be your favorite necessarily, but let's just recognize it's a vast achievement. So.
It's a vast achievement. And I always understand when people are like, it's just not for me. Okay, that's fine. No book is going to be for everybody. No book is going to check everybody's box. It just is what it is. And that's okay. I know some people sometimes in my Discord server would just be like, hey, Andrew, sorry, I'm putting it down. I'm like, that's fine. Go read something that makes you happy.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love Malazan, but I'm fine with people who don't, and there are plenty of them. So I do want to get your opinion Are you one of those people who was scarred terribly by the season 1 of the adaptation of Wheel of Time, or how is your? Don't feel like you have to get too emotional here or anything, but
No,
are you one of those fans of the books that was really upset about the series, or what?
yes, I was very upset about the series, but I was not. So it was funny because, you know, when the series released, there were channels in my server where people could give their thoughts, and it quickly became, you know, full of vitriol, where people were very upset.
Yeah.
And I was
fans of the books, I'm assuming.
Yes, and I was quickly realizing that I was one of these individuals, and this was around the 3rd or 4th episode, and I decided that it's just a TV show. I don't have to watch it. No one's coming into my room and burning my Wheel of Time books. That story still exists in its entirety.
Yeah,
I can just choose to remove myself from the situation.
Yeah,
which is what I did.
That's smart.
And it's funny because, you know, I'm bringing up all these other channels, but a Man Carrying Thing did this like hour and a half long form, basically dissertation on why it wasn't just a bad adaptation, but it was a bad show. From pacing to character arcs to character development, and things of that nature. It wasn't, the story didn't flow, where basically within the episodes, we would have an emotional issue between Rand and Egwene. And then instead of evolving that issue and evolving the relationship and evolving their character arcs, we just kept circling back around to the same issue that was in the first episode, which doesn't make for interesting watching. I also didn't really appreciate the use of fridging on one of the characters. That didn't really, and he was, the showrunner was warned not to do this, and he did it anyway. And the reaction was exactly what Brandon Sanderson said the reaction was going to be. Brandon Sanderson was involved in the show and recommended don't do this, and they did it anyway.
Right.
And then there was the fan service, and the fan service kind of at times felt like slaps in the face. So like in the first episode, we see Rand pull this sword, and it's got a heron on the suba instead of the hilt. And basically that means, you know, there's certain prophecies that involve that heron being on the hilt, not on the suba.
Right.
And then we proceed to give him this sword, and he never uses it in the show. He never trains with it. And so it's literally just there as saying, hey, look, we included this for you, but you never expound on what made that special in the first place. Yeah. And there were multiple instances of that. And so to me, it failed as an adaptation, and it failed as a TV show. Yeah. But if it comes back and season 2 is amazing, sure, I will suffer through season 1. And also there was of course the fake out deaths. There's just, everybody keeps, like, every episode had 1 or 2 fake out deaths. And you can only use that mechanic so many times before I don't believe you. Right. So yeah,
interesting. I actually thought, and this is speaking as somebody who I consider myself a fan of the book series, Wheel of Time. Not a super fan. I've read the series once, and it was a decade ago. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite of all time. I've mentioned it in my top 10 video though. I think I put it at number 10. Which
I'll take it.
Some people don't get really mad at me. I had one guy recently tell me I'm a terrible person because I put Wheel of Time at number 10. I thought that was the funniest thing ever. But anyway, I thought the show episodes 1 through 3, I thought, oh no, this is just a disaster. The pacing is terrible. I have no investment in this. The characters are just being thrown from one moment to another without anything connecting it together. I didn't like the first 3 episodes. And then episodes, and this is probably where a lot of people will disagree with me, and I'm fine with that, but I thought episodes 4 through 7 had some really good television moments. These were things often that were not part of the book series that they added in. I liked certain things that they put in there that were not in the books, or that they transferred from, let's say, the prequel book into this first season in order to say, give a better sense of the relationship between an Aes Sedai and her warder. I thought they did some good storytelling, I thought, in episodes 4 through 7. And I thought, okay, there's some potential here. There's something here that they're doing this adaptation. It's not Wheel of Time, the books. I thought there was some, and then episode 8 happened.
I haven't seen them, so.
It was a complete, just awful, terrible disaster. Episode 8 was like, and I know there was stuff going on. They had, the COVID was in full swing, and the one actor who was playing Matt left the show, and they probably had to scramble to figure out, okay, what do we do with this? So it was really it was terrible. The episode 8 was really awful, I thought. But 4 through 7, I thought, wow, maybe it could be good, almost. But
it's possible. So one of the things that just started me out wrong was the very first line of episode 1, where we're getting this monologue from Moraine, and it just kind of immediately broke the canon. And it's where who the dragon can be. If you know.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, that kind of defeats the entire point. That literally the whole reason is because this half of the one power is tainted and drives people insane.
Right.
And so if you're going to be scared of this prophecy, it makes sense to just have it this way. And I don't know, one of the key points was they felt like they were trying to add tension into the show, and they didn't trust the source material. And so they decided to do, as Man Carrying Thing put it, whodunit, of who is the dragon going to be, when it's quite clear very early on who the dragon is supposed to be.
Yeah. It is very clear in the books. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They try to make it could it be this character? Could it be that character? Could it be? And I'll have to watch I haven't watched that. I like Jake's videos though. So
it's gotten like 370,000 views.
Oh, wow.
It's about an hour and a half long, but I mean, if you watch it on 1.5 speed, it's like 45 minutes. 50 minutes.
I've never done that to watch a video. I feel like I would lose a lot of the. Maybe I should just practice at 1.2.
I'm used to it with audiobooks.
Okay.
So I usually listen to an audiobook at 1.5 speed. I cannot listen to it at 1x speed anymore.
Interesting.
It feels like somebody is talking in slow motion.
Wow. Well, speaking of audiobooks, this is a big announcement for me.
Okay.
I just today downloaded Audible onto my phone.
Congratulations. I am so proud of you.
I have never ever used an audiobook before. This will be my first time.
I've heard the Warlord Chronicles, which would be right up your alley, are fantastic on audio.
Okay. I will consider that.
And that is a glowing recommendation from Alan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he said that audiobook got him into audiobooks.
Interesting. Well, I do trust Alan, so that's someone I'll try. But I did decide already. I wanted to do a series that I was already intimately familiar with, because one thing I'm scared of is I will be listening to an audiobook and I'll be constantly pausing because I feel like I've missed something. I'll be going back and rewinding or whatever. You can do that, right?
You can scrub.
Okay. So I didn't want to do a series that I hadn't read before.
Okay.
I wanted to do something that I knew already, was familiar, and was thinking about rereading anyway. And I've heard about the First Law audiobooks being awesome.
Stephen Pacey's fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard about the Dresden Files books being awesome on audio.
I've only done the last 2.
Okay, I've heard good things. I know I can't. Is it James Marsters?
James Marsters, yes.
Yeah. And then I've heard wonderful things, and most recently Ed on the Brothers Gwyn talked about listening to Andy Serkis narrating Fellowship.
Okay, I have those.
Yeah, so I want to listen. That's going to be my first one. I'm going to listen to Lord of the Rings, starting with Fellowship, narrated by Andy Serkis.
Perfect.
So I have a lot of trust in him as an actor. I did try.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a rich voice that I feel like I can listen to. There are some people whose voices I wouldn't want to listen to for hours and hours and hours. But
his range, he can go from like this dark, menacing tone to this high, squeaky Gollum.
Yeah.
And it's the man is an absolute legend. Of just motion capture and voice acting, in-person acting. Personally, I felt he was entirely wasted in the most current Batman adaptation.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, he plays Alfred.
This is the one with Robert Pattinson.
Yes,
Batman.
correct.
Okay, yeah.
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I had not heard that yet. Okay. I eventually I will watch that. I do try to catch some of the superhero film because I grew up on comics.
If you want, have you watched Black Panther?
Yes, I watched Black Panther.
Yeah. So he was the villain.
Oh yes, yeah.
He was absolutely amazing in there.
Yeah, and he was in some of the Avengers films in that same role, I believe.
I believe so. There's a lot of
brief moments in the Avengers films, I believe.
There's a lot of content there.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm excited actually because this will be my first audiobook, and it's a book that I know and love. So I'm not scared of missing something.
Right.
I know the story really well.
That's good. That's a good way to get into audiobooks, though, is go with something familiar. Go with, somebody whose voice you can listen to for hours on end.
Yeah.
And just enjoy the experience. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about doing The Hobbit here soon.
Oh, okay. Cool.
He actually did all 4.
Yeah, he did The Hobbit as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to do Lord of the Rings for a few reasons. I've read The Hobbit more times than I could possibly count. For myself when I was younger, but also with my daughters. So I could almost like recite chapters of it, so it's not a book I felt like I needed to reread just now.
I'm excited to start reading with my children.
Oh, it's so much fun. It is so much fun. You can do it anytime. I started when they were literally out of the womb. So
I remember seeing a picture of you, and I don't remember what video this was in.
So with my daughter.
It was your daughter laying on your chest with you holding a book over her.
Yep. That's how it was. They were in that picture. She's like 1 week old.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I read Curious George to my daughter.
Beautiful. Yeah.
She'll just walk up to me and say George, and so I'll pick up Curious George and read it to her.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I also, as I think a lot of your viewers know, and a lot of us here on BookTube know, you have become a father again very recently. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm running on 4 hours of sleep right now. So.
Oh, wow. You've been hiding it really well.
Well, thank you.
I do remember those days very, very well, of getting up in the middle of the night to warm up some formula or whatever. Yep. And it's an act of heroism to be a parent. It's going
to be interesting because I go back to work on Monday. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. You've had paternity leave until.
Yeah, I took 5 weeks.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. So congratulations, though. It's just so wonderful.
Thank you.
It definitely one of my favorite things I've done in my life is be a dad.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I can't remember not being like it's funny because you look back on stages of your life and you can clearly recognize that stage of your life, but it doesn't feel like, your current situation, which, I'm loving my current situation. I've got a wonderful wife. I've got, a wonderful daughter. And he is just an absolute demon when it comes to sleeping. No, I'm just kidding. He is delightful. And it's wonderful to just look back because, you only have young kids for so long. And so I just, I work from home.
I know it.
And so I just get to really enjoy spending pretty much all of my time with my kids as they grow. And it's wild because I can look at them every single day and notice something new that they have learned. And it's awesome to watch them develop.
Yeah, it is. It really is magic. It's so beautiful. But yeah, it goes by so fast too.
Trust me, I can't believe my daughter's 2.
Yeah. It sounds a little bit like my family situation. So I have an older sister who was angelic, really nice, wonderful, mild, very easy. It was just my mother tells me how, my older sister was so easy to take care of, so well behaved. And then I came along.
I've had this conversation with my wife.
Yep. And it was like night and day. And suddenly she thought it was going to be easy. Taking care of babies is no problem. They're all going to be like this one. And then I came along, and apparently I was more active. So I was a kind of a pain, not only to her, but to my older sister, who sort of took it upon herself to just protect this annoying little bundle that came along. So
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's life. You seem to have turned out fairly well.
I hope so.
I mean, you've got a book that's getting ready to come out.
Well,
maybe.
Yeah. I hopefully, yeah. So it's I'm in the process now, or my agent, I should say, is in the process now of pitching the book. So actually, that is beginning next week. So in the week that this video comes out is when my agent will be pitching the books to publish.
I'm so excited for you.
Thank
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, well, I hope that will happen in the near future. Everything depends on how the pitch goes, and if there are any editors at publishing houses who are interested. And I will say, though, that if it doesn't happen, so be it, and I will self-publish.
I was about to ask, have you considered self-pubbing?
Yeah, of course. I absolutely. I want to do traditional publishing. That's a goal. I wouldn't have gone out and gotten an agent otherwise, which is, by the way, a huge process in and of itself.
Okay.
It's very hard to get a good literary agent. It's a whole huge hurdle. And then the next hurdle is getting the publisher. So,
right.
But yeah, that's all quite a journey. But I would definitely, I put so much into these books that I would like to share them with people. And hopefully I've given people a story that many will find compelling and will find that it speaks to them. I hope so. So I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident of that. I've certainly put enough work into it, and I think I've done.
Yeah, you've been writing it for 18 years, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it has been 18 years since I started work on it. I don't write constantly because I do have this day job, which requires a lot of my time. And so it was primarily in the summers during the last 18 years that I've been writing. Sometimes I'm able to write into the semester, probably for the first few weeks until things get really busy with grading essays and stuff. But yeah, it's been a long time. And the books have gone through a lot of revisions. And a big step was getting the literary agent, because then it got real at that point. It was like, oh, okay, maybe I can do this. And there's something here that somebody who really knows this business really well thinks is good. So that was a big step in just sort of self-belief at that point. But also another key moment, and more recently, has been working with AP Canavan from Dragon. I had him as a developmental editor look at the books too, because I'd gone over them a million times. And I thought, okay, I don't know what else to do to make them better. And it was really great to have a professional like AP look at them, because he was able to say, okay, here are some things I think you can do to make them even better. And so I did that. And now I feel like, okay, and it still could be the case where if a publisher does take on the books, an editor at the publishing house might say, yeah, I want you to do this, this, and this. I want you to, there could still be editing ahead. It's possible. But I would venture to say that very few books reach a publisher as polished, I think, as my books are at this point, because I really have gone over them a lot and gotten that help from my agents and from AP and other people who've read them over the years. So yeah.
Should make it an easier sell then.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I have no way of predicting this market. It's an exciting time, I think, for books and for fantasy and publishing.
Absolutely.
A lot of great things going on. But at the same time, it's a bit of I think it's still a chaotic time for the publishing industry. I haven't quite found their footing in this world that has changed a lot since the internet, and other forms of storytelling. And now we're seeing, I think it's a good thing overall, though, that we're seeing a lot of different new ways for people to write stories and have them reach other people. And so self-publishing is definitely a wonderful, a good thing. And I'm discovering more and more, like you, I've spent time in the last couple of years of the channel checking out some self-published books too.
Absolutely. My Kindle is absolutely just chock full. I've probably got 80 self-pub books on here right now.
Wow.
Unread. I've got more than, and a lot of times, with Kindle deals, it's just like, oh yeah, $1.99 for this self-pub book you've been interested in for 6 months. Yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and pick that up.
Very tempting. Very tempting.
Yeah, it's very tempting. And I think what's so cool about the self-published market is, a lot of the times, because I think the big five has gone down to the big four, if I remember correctly. One bought out the other.
Yeah.
And they're very set in their ways, because it's been their dog and pony show for the last century, or however long. A century. I'm using century as an arbitrary
it's
placeholder. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And so some ideas just take a lot longer to kind of set in. And so some of the stuff that we're seeing within the self-published community is ideas that normally the traditional market is passing on because they don't think it's workable.
That's right.
And it's fantastic that there's now an infrastructure where a creator or an artistic individual can just go, well, I disagree with you, so here. And it's great to see the validation that these people are getting, these authors and writers, because, yes, they do have something special. And yes, it was worth getting out there, just because there is a response and there are readers. They're getting eyes on their pages. And I think that's awesome.
I agree. That is the real strength, in my opinion, of the self-publishing world, is the creative freedom that exists there. And it's a wonderful thing. And I'm sure that self-publishing, especially those that gain traction, they're going to influence traditional publishing in some ways too. So, and social media and all these other things it's a really shifting market. So things are really kind of muddy, I think, at the moment, and maybe they'll stay that way for a while. But you're right that until essentially the invention of the internet, until it became really popular, things had gone on, and I don't like to use the word gatekeepers, because the people who work in publishing they're not evil, they're
right.
They're not trying to be mean to anyone. They are people who love books. They are people who love good stories, and they're trying to bring good stories to light. And there was just a limited amount of space for that. So they're not, they're just as interested in getting great books out as we are in reading them. But there was a limited capacity there. And now we have this different world, really. It's a very different landscape because of the internet, really. And because of the ability, the cheapness now of being able to put out books in whatever form now, obviously, because you can download them and you can listen to them and you can read them in a physical form, whatever you want now. It's really, it's a different world. Plus, it's just cheaper even to print books now. And marketing is another big thing that you can do much more on your own if you have, if you want to invest in that and you want to put in the hard work. Get out there on social media and be your own marketer. And to some degree, even traditionally published authors have to do that now. That's part of the game, even in traditional publishing, but it's absolutely required if you want more people than half your friends and family to read your book. You have to figure out social media, and you have to go out. You have to
figure out a way to get the word out.
Yep.
And I mean, there's apps like there's websites like NetGalley, where you can get advanced readers with reviewers and stuff. It's a good way to get eyes on your stuff. You can it's easier to find artists for covers. You can see portfolios instantaneously. It's just great.
It is great. I think a lot of times in these periods of big transition, often really good things come out of that. And I feel like we're kind of in a golden age in that sense. There's a lot of stuff bubbling up, and fantasy as a genre is being enriched all the time by various types of people who had no way in previously for whatever reasons. And that's a whole, hours long discussion. But I'm excited that the genre is being enriched in this way by lots of diverse voices, and diverse in many respects. All sorts of people coming at the genre from different perspectives and doing different things that haven't been done before. So it's exciting.
One of the things I love is that we're saying all these great things about self-pub, but the traditional publishers are also realizing that there's some great stuff out there that they may have passed on. And so like Travis Baldry's Legends and Lattes is a perfect example. It started as a self-pub, picked up for a 2-book deal because they just loved what he was doing. Jonathan French's The Lotlands trilogy started out. What's Alan's favorite one? The Books of Babel.
Oh yeah, Josiah Bancroft.
Josiah Bancroft started out self-pub, got picked up. And Orbit is one of the ones that is just very great at taking a self-pub and bringing it into the traditional kind of market.
I like what Orbit is doing. I feel like Orbit is one of the more dynamic publishers of fantasy out there these days. Not only do they pick up the self-published ones, but I feel like they do a better job, perhaps. And I don't have a very good sense of all this, but from my very limited perspective, I feel like they're doing a really good job of marketing their authors.
Yes. They've got websites. They've got, they upgrade cover art. They'll put it through an edit. Pick up any typos that may have been missed in self-pub. It's just absolutely great to see. Maybe
it's just that the folks at Orbit are a little more willing to take some risks. I don't know what it is, but
I don't know.
It seems,
but I love it.
Seems to be working well, because it's not something I used to pay attention to before BookTube, is who published what I'm reading right now. But now I always look, and often enough you see Orbit, and they're doing stuff that I think other publishers might want to look at.
Well, and so one of the things that I love about Orbit is uniformity. I love when my editions match, even if it takes years. I'm one of those sticklers where when a book goes onto my shelf, if it matches, I'm happy. If it doesn't, I'm irritated.
You don't watch my bookshelf tour because it will traumatize you.
I fully remember, Philip, all of your different, but I mean, that's just the kind of eclectic individual that you are.
Yes.
I just might be a little bit more OCD when it comes to how my bookshelves look. At least in that one little aspect of our very vastly different lives. But it's because I am a book collector as well as a book reader, which is kind of the reason I started my channel. And so I like the way books tend to look on my shelves. And if it's appealing to my eye, then it fills me with some sort of joy.
That's interesting, because I came to BookTube not even knowing that BookTube existed. I kind of just started a channel without really understanding what BookTube was. And at this point, I'm a little more knowledgeable. I think it's fair to say.
You've got about some 15,000 subscribers.
Well, right now it's like 13,500 or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so.
You're in the area.
Yeah. But it's interesting because it took me a while to figure out, oh, okay, so this BookTube thing, I'm here for book analysis was my motivation. I love talking about fantasy. I think it is so rich and so deserving of critical exploration. There's so many really outstanding stories being told in this genre. And that's why I was here. But then I figured this, I found that a lot of people are here. There's a social aspect to this.
Yes.
That's very important. And that's a big part of what BookTube is all about, is this getting to talk to other people about these stories. And sometimes even the stories are an excuse, but just hang out with nice people.
Yeah.
And then there's this other aspect of it that it took me even longer to figure out, which is book collecting. And that's a big part of this too. And for the longest time, I was like, why do people like to watch book hauls?
It's so fun.
Why do people want to see me get books and show? And it took me, I'm slow. Okay. I'm just a little bit slow, but I figured out, because they love books. They love the aesthetics of books and book collecting. And it's like collecting other, whatever. So I get it. I totally get it. I am somebody who basically most of my books were accumulated during my graduate student years when I was dirt poor. So they are basically just used and tattered and all kinds of different sizes. And I have no problem with that. I still have a grad student mentality in many ways when it comes to buying stuff. Or you could just call me a cheapskate, I guess.
You're frugal.
I'm frugal. Yes.
There you go.
In some
You're thrifty.
Although I will say that BookTube has made me buy more new books than ever before in my life.
It's funny because I do a monthly book haul, and usually it's like 30, 40 books.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are certain people, not everybody, and I did not give myself this moniker. I am starting to see the moniker Book Haul King floated around, which just basically means I've got a book buying problem. Like that's not a term of endearment. That's hey, you should probably have an intervention. But it's a lot of fun. I did know about BookTube, but very, very lightly when I first started my channel. When I first, I guess I was fully aware of it when I started my channel. But the way I discovered it was somebody told me about BookTube.
Okay.
Where like I only know because the social aspect is most readers don't have tons of people that they can go and talk to with about books, and if they do, it may not be the same genre, it may not be the same authors, and it just may not be the same tastes. And so luckily my boss at the time was watching Daniel Green. Okay. And he kind of turned me on to Daniel Green. Yep. And then Daniel, I tried some recommendations that didn't quite work out, which is just fine. We just have different tastes. Yeah. And some of his recommendations have worked, some of them haven't.
But he's a Wheel of Time guy too, isn't he?
He is a Wheel of Time guy. Yeah. So like I said, some similarities, some differences. Yeah. And then from him, I discovered Mike from Mike's book reviews. Yeah. And I was a long time viewer of his. I think I started watching him when he was at maybe 25,000 subscribers, which he just hit 70. Okay.
I think I started watching him when he was around 10,000.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, he's just absolutely awesome when it comes to, great ideas and content ideas. And, you can just kind of, hey, I don't know what to do. What's Mike doing?
He runs a tight ship over there. Yeah. He does a great job with his content. Yeah.
And then Mike sent me to Mark from Slowly Read.
Oh yeah.
And I started watching Mark's stuff. Mark sent me to Nico.
Oh, that's where you found Nico.
Okay. That's where I found Nico, because Nico had done a Mark Lawrence review for Prince of Thorns.
Okay, cool.
And I was watching it, and literally this whole thing started was because I've kind of told this story, but I don't know if I've ever gone in depth about it. And I had commented on Nico's video because Nico was way in front of his bookshelf and off to the side. And so it created a bunch of this negative space, and you could see a door. And so I like just commented, I was like, hey, I really like your videos. Why don't you move closer to your bookshelves so you eliminate this kind of off-center mentality, and we can get a better look at your books.
Okay.
And I did not expect that comment to be received at all, but he took the criticism very well and actually made the change just to try it out. And from then on, we started this discourse. He had created a Discord server for a buddy read on a whim for American Gods by Neil Gaiman, which I had just read. So I wanted to kind of be in on that conversation.
Cool.
And he introduced me to Megan from Megan's Reading Revelations.
Oh, yeah.
And then the two of them ganged up on me and told me I needed to start a channel. And I said, what would I even call this thing? They said, we don't care. Call it Andrew's Wizardly Reads for all we care. I said, fine. So that's exactly
how you got your name.
That's exactly how this happened.
That's funny.
And we were kind of off to the races from there.
Yeah, and you and Nico are very good friends.
Yes, we are. I talk to Nico daily. I've met Nico in person 3 times. I've met Nico
so he
in person.
He doesn't live nearby.
He lives 8 hours from me.
Okay.
And one time he was driving through and we hung out for a day and a half. Cool. And then he was in Chicago and I drove up to see him in Chicago.
Okay.
And he's in Des Moines, Iowa. And then he came here around March. We both have March birthdays. And so we decided to hang out. And because I had kids and he didn't, he figured it would just be easier to come to me.
Right.
And we hung out for a few days there. And we've struck up a really close friendship. We both run our Discord server together, mainly because like my channel started getting bigger. And the question was floated, will you start your own Discord, which is a very common thing for a YouTuber to do. And I said, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to leave this server. And if I start my own server, I'm going to dedicate time there versus here. And so Nico was like, let's just share it. And cool. That's kind of how our Discord server was formed.
Oh, neat. Yeah. I haven't jumped into Discord.
I know you're not the biggest fan of, well, you're in Discord, you just don't use it.
I don't use it very frequently. There are basically 2 Discords where I've hung out tiny bits, and one
is that Alan and Mike's?
Mike's is one, and Iskar Jarex is the other.
Oh, Iskar Jarex. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's it. And that's, I don't have time. I just don't have time.
That's fair.
But it's interesting you mentioned Daniel Green, because I think because of YouTube and the algorithm, I think most people who just write fantasy in YouTube are going to get Daniel Green.
He's got 430,000 subscribers at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, the bigger you get, the more your videos you could put out a video of you sleeping and it would get put out and it would get tens of thousands of views, I'm sure. But he was the first I saw, I think, as well, because I did have enough sense to, when I was starting out, to say, I wonder if anyone is doing this. Let's see. And I typed something like best fantasy books or something. And then I saw, of course, Daniel Green. I said, oh, here's a young chap who's doing this. So
a young lad.
He seems very excited about it all. So let's check this out. And it was quite an education for me to figure out that BookTube existed, and not only that, but fantasy BookTube existed. And I don't know how many people have channels that are just like fantasy oriented on BookTube, but I would venture to guess there are possibly millions. I don't know.
I don't know a million. I would say there's probably thousands.
There's a lot that we don't even know about. We have our corner here. And then there are people out there in other countries and other places.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I didn't consider that.
Yeah, there are just so many. And I myself, this won't sound like a lot to some people, but I'm subscribed to about 200 people. And I don't even have anything close to enough time to watch all their videos. I feel awful about that because there's such nice, wonderful people out there, but I don't have time to watch all those videos. So I will just pop in once in a while and say, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. Maybe I'll check out what they're doing. But for the most part, it's really hard to keep up because there are and I feel bad about that, but
I have a handful that I pretty much prioritize, and then I've got a lot of my friends that I like to check in on quite often. Domnish is one of my good friends that I like to check out a lot. Of
Yeah,
course,
so he's
Nico.
one I'm aware of,
Yeah.
and I'm subscribed to. He's never heard a word from me though, because
He's a good guy.
Yeah, it seems like it. But I just don't have time to watch all the people that deserve to be watched out there. And it's a good problem. It's a good problem.
I think last I looked, I was subscribed to about 160.
Okay, so yeah, you'll probably be the same as me. I think I'm just under 200 at this point, which I've heard people say they're subscribed to a lot more than that. But it's like you said though. I tend to most often watch the people I grew up with here on BookTube.
Yes.
So the class of 2020.
I missed it by 3 months.
Oh, we still love you, so it's okay. But
feel the love.
But yeah, no, it's there's a certain circle that we all started out around the same time, and I think those are the ones who I just sort of on default mode will gravitate toward.
Jimmy started that class of 2020 stuff, didn't he?
I don't know who started, Alan or Jimmy or somebody.
It was one of them.
Yeah, started talking about, and it seems like I mean, obviously we're biased slightly, but
the class of legends.
It seems like it was a good year for people starting BookTube channels. I don't know, but I don't know how was it when people who've been around longer, like Daniel Green or Murphy or whoever, I don't know how long they've been around, but I wonder how many people from their time are still going at it, you know?
I know Daniel's been around, I think, for six or 7 years.
Okay.
So he's been around for a while.
Yeah.
I think he was like 25 or 24 when he started, and I think he's pushing 30.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I have no idea.
Murphy.
Go ahead.
I remember Murphy showed one of her initial videos in one of her videos, and it had been like 4 years, I think, at that time. That was a couple of years ago.
Okay, so she's probably been around 6 years or so too.
Yeah, something like that.
So maybe they're from the same class too. I don't know.
Yeah, they're well, and they've met in real life too.
Yeah,
they've collabed in real life, and they're friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's you've met Joanna and Alan and Jimmy and AP.
Yep.
I'm incredibly jealous.
It was fun. It was surreal for a few seconds, and then it was just very natural to be with them in the flesh and just have the chance to chat. And I was the annoying one who said, you know, guys, we really should record something while we're all together. So
I remember that video started, and then Jimmy just walks into frame, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. It was really surreal for a bit there. And then of course, Alan and Joanna came later, and we had that breakfast together where I had that, like, it's a 3-minute video with all of us.
It's awesome. It's heartwarming though.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've met, the only two I've met are Nico and Jessie, the Bookish Mom.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Jessie.
So I've met Jessie. She came, her husband likes to come to a car show here in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
And so they were here in town. And so I drove downtown, which is like a 34-minute drive. It's not that bad.
You guys do like your cars in Indiana, don't you? Yeah.
So Indiana doesn't have a real good public transit system.
Oh, but you have that one loop that people go around and around all the
465, time. Yes.
No, I mean the race.
Oh, Indy 500.
Yeah.
We have a highway that goes all the way around Indianapolis called 465.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that's where my brain. So it's funny. You would think, me being from Indiana, I would be into NASCAR and Indy racing, and I'm really not.
Okay.
I've been to a couple of races when I was, with the Boy Scouts when I was a Boy Scout. But really, since I aged out of the Scouts, it hasn't been very much in the forefront. Like my dad still occasionally goes. I've got some friends who still occasionally go. My sister lives over by the racetrack and stuff like that.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. My friend I told you about earlier just went to the Indianapolis 500 for the first time ever. And he showed me, he called me while he was there.
It's loud.
It was like, I couldn't hear a thing except cars going, wow. and it looked insanely intense. But yeah,
well, it's intense in increments because you're on a loop. And most of the cars are going by at the same time. It's like, right. Wow, that was really exciting. And let's wait for the next 45 seconds till they come back.
And then,
yeah. And well, it's kind of fun to hear them coming because and then they're off. And it can be kind of fun.
Yeah, it's not my thing, but I can see where people would get an adrenaline rush from it. Maybe for you, though, it's like I live near New York City. So when people visit me, they want to see like the Statue of Liberty or whatever. And it's like, okay.
I have only ever seen the Statue of Liberty from shore.
That's, you know what? That's the best way to see it. Because if you go to the island.
It's crowded.
It's not crowded so much as you just go there and you look up and yep, there it is. Now what?
Fair enough. That's kind of why I don't want to go see Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Because like, you've got this kind of idealized image in your mind where you've kind of built it up into this thing, and then you go and you're like, oh, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah. I guess as a symbol, it's important as a symbol, right? Yeah. Both of them are symbols of bigger things, but
yes.
And maybe by going there, you participate in what they symbolize. But I will tell you that I did years ago when they still allowed people to go up into the statue. It was a real.
I thought you couldn't go into the torch. You can't go into the statue at all anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, that keeps changing over the years. I haven't tried, but there was a period definitely where you weren't even allowed inside.
Oh, wow.
But I did go inside before that, and I went up to, there's a little window right around, I think it's around the crown or whatever. And you go up these stairs, and it is crowded when you're going in the statue. And there's all these people, like there's somebody in front of you, there's somebody right behind you. So you're going up these stairs, are very narrow, and there's somebody's butt in your face the whole time. And you finally get to this tiny window at the top, and you have like a second to look out it before the next person's like, my turn, So
that reminds me of the terracotta warriors in China.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was in China in 2019.
Okay.
About 2 months before everything hit the fan.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So the terracotta warriors was absolutely amazing. Great Wall, not so much.
Huh.
It's funny because I romanticized the Great Wall for years, and then what you don't take into consideration is this thing was built thousands of years ago, or hundreds of years and so modern stairs weren't a thing.
Yeah.
And instead they used kind of incremental cobbles.
Yeah.
And so you've got to take these tiny steps, and it's all smooth stone. It's not concrete. It's not textured. So if it's windy, if it's wet, and because the wall follows the curvature of the mountains, it gets very steep. It gets very dangerous. And it's just not something you would consider. It's gorgeous. But the terracotta warriors though blew my mind. It was amazing. If you ever have the chance to go to China, into the Xi'an. In the Xi'an province, definitely check out the terracotta warriors. It is well worth it.
Yeah. But I'm sure there were other people who wanted to see them as well, right?
Oh my gosh. It literally, you were like this the entire time, because it's all enclosed in buildings, because obviously they're pits and excavations and things of that nature.
Right.
And it's shoulder to shoulder. People are shoving you out of the way. You lose your group like that, and you got to find them again. It's insanity, but it was worth it. One of the things that reminded me, when you were saying that you can't go into the Statue of Liberty anymore, speaking of historical landmarks, my mom, there's a picture of my mother back when she was a teenager, and they went over to the UK, and you can't do this anymore. But it's a picture of them standing inside the circle of Stonehenge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's since been closed off. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
And so I love the fact that I've got this picture of my mother standing in Stonehenge.
Yep. That's another one where I've been there probably 3 or 4 times.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And it's cool. They are cool, but you're there with a ton of other tourists, and that does kind of ruin the vibe a little bit, to be honest. One time I was there weren't many people because the weather was bad. And that was cool.
So pro tip, going during inclement weather.
Yep. When people are less likely to be there. So yeah. But yeah, I love travel. I absolutely love it. I'd love to see China someday. That would be so cool. But it is one of the things that I think it may not be immediately evident, but I don't think it's that deep a thought, but traveling is very similar to reading books. I feel there are two instincts of mine. I feel like they go very well together. And also as a writer, I feel like travel has been, after reading books, the biggest source of inspiration for my writing. Going places, experiencing other cultures. You mentioned the high context, low context stuff earlier.
Right.
Understanding that and the differences in the way people communicate and their customs and getting to know other cultures. I feel like people who read fantasy love getting to know other cultures.
Oh, absolutely.
That's part of the joy of the genre. These created cultures that are sometimes based on real world cultures, past or present.
Speaking of Wheel of Time.
There you go.
Cherry picked.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cultural elements that get, integrated into the, making these stories not only come alive, but feel realistic and that we can identify with. Because it comes to a point where, like, if you're just writing something or reading something that you have no context for, you have no frame of mind for, it becomes hard to immerse yourself in that setting or these characters. One of the problems that, I as a reader have with certain books is if a character does something that I feel wouldn't be how they would react. So like, and a lot of people disagree with me on this. There are certain instances where Robin Hobb will take Fitz and make him do a thing. And it feels at times like that, like the author is reaching into the story and forcing something. And again, a lot of people disagree with me on this. But that kind of breaks my immersion, where I'm just like, no, if you better understand, personality, you better understand cultural aspects. And if you've built this cultural aspect, don't break it. If you break your own culture and you break your own character and you break your own world building or your own rules, then it's kind of detrimental. And so traveling and understanding the intricacies of culture and the intricacies of humanity in its entire breadth can be really enriching to a story, and I think is almost mandatory, which is why, a lot of authors, even if they don't travel, they do a lot of reading, they do a lot of research, which, it's enriching to the point where it can help kind of make something, it can put my extra, layer of lacquer on a story to make it just really shine and make it bright.
Yeah.
I don't know if what I said made any sense at all, but those are my kind of in the moment thoughts.
I thought you made a lot of sense there. Yeah, no, I think it is a big part of the fantasy experience is encountering other cultures and seeing other worlds and seeing reflections of ourselves in these other worlds, because that is something that for me is at the heart of the joy of storytelling. Is, yes, it's a paradox in a way, because I enjoy experiencing other perspectives, other cultures, but then I see myself in them as well. And I see myself reflected in them, and I realize my common humanity with those people, whether it be in the books or whether it be in the real world where I'm traveling to a culture that's very different from my own. And for me, there's something very transcending and very beautiful about that experience. I feel like the world would be a better place if all of us lived in another country when we were maybe like 17 years old or something for a year, and just got to know other people, other perspectives. That would be, maybe I'm naive, but I think it would be a cool thing if everybody in the world could experience that, and there would be hopefully less misunderstanding in the world. But
I like the aspect of being multicultural, Because I was raised in a deaf community, which is high context, but at the same time, my parents were hearing. And then, again, I come from white collar and blue collar, which, whether you believe it or not, are still two entirely different cultures within they're two subcultures within an entire whole.
Yes, and true. Very different viewpoints on many things. Yeah.
You'll get different political viewpoints. You'll get different ideologies. You'll get, just all sorts of really interesting conversations can be had just between, if you look at within the workforce, blue and white collar. Yeah. And I think writers and readers in themselves engage in a form of anthropology. Mm-hmm. Where, you are going out, you are experiencing something different, you are challenging your worldview. I remember when I took some anthropological studies when I was in college, and I absolutely loved, because I would be challenged on my viewpoint. I would be challenged on, during our exams, we would have to be like, okay, this person is in this situation within this culture. Now, how should they react? And a lot of the times you would go, oh, this is how you react. And then you have to stop and you have to think, no, that's how I react in my culture. They wouldn't do that. That would be either seen as rude or insulting, or you have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And it expands your worldview. And it expands what you can understand as kind of the breadth of what humanity is. Yep. And I feel a lot of the times what is happening in the modern world is we enter into these sounding chambers where we kind of surround ourselves, and social media is terrible about this. True. And it's designed to do this. It will basically, you enter into this chamber and it takes some snippets of what you might find interesting or what you click on the internet. And then it just keeps giving you more of that until you're inundated with it, and you're only getting your own viewpoints back at you. Yeah. And then people take that as fact.
It's kind of a loop of narcissism.
and it can be incredibly limiting.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times, I go out of my way when I'm on social media at times to watch a video I don't agree with. Mm-hmm. And then that way I trick the algorithm into sending me a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And, I do that with my reading as well, because, I may not be comfortable reading historical fiction because there's some historical stuff that's truly terrible.
Oh, my goodness.
That you wouldn't agree with here in modern society. There was a book, I don't even remember the context this came from, but I remember reading a story, and it was a historical fiction. And I looked up a review on it, and it had 1 star. Because it was set in the 1300s, and a gentleman of 30 had married a 13-year-old. And the person was just like, oh, this is, these are sex crimes and things of that nature. Is this pedophilia? And I'm like, well, you got to understand 700 years ago, that was every day.
That was not considered a criminal behavior at that time. Yeah.
Well, today's modern thinking is very much
right.
A crime.
They didn't even have a concept of childhood like we do, really.
Right. You were born, and as soon as you were able to help out, you were either doing dishes, or by the time you could lift a tool, you were sent to factories, or you were sent to learn a trade or to be productive. Yeah. You always were a marketable asset somehow. Right. You had to contribute because extreme
for girls poverty, often that meant as soon as you started, being
a source of a dowry,
or you were seen as a commodity to make more workers. Yeah.
And it's very uncomfortable to read something like that. That challenges you from a kind of I've lost the word. Anthropological standpoint. There we go. It kind of challenges you, and you've got to be like, wow, we have come so far. Yeah. And so it's good to know where you come from and see where you're going.
Absolutely. I totally agree. 2 of my favorite authors, my actual favorite authors of all time, Stephen Erickson and Ian Esslemont, are trained in anthropology and archaeology. No coincidence. They are doing exactly what you're talking about in the Malazan books. The 2 Malazan authors are very much concerned with those things that you're talking about. And Yeah, I mean, it's just their books breathe this in terms of just the layers of history and past cultures and civilizations and the encounters between people from different places, and often violent encounters. But then there are these moments in these books where people who are absolutely at odds see the humanity in each other. And there's such powerful transcending moments that I think really resonate with a lot of, obviously, the Malazan fans. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm on the fourth Malazan book, or Malazan book.
Yeah. Either way is fine. Yeah.
Either way is fine. I need to continue. Memories of Ice was a rough read for me.
There's some tough stuff that happens in there. It really is.
And
tough. Yeah.
I think I read it 6 months ago is when I read Memories of Ice, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've got the audiobook for the fourth book. And I just need to dive in and give it another go.
That's definitely a series. You're much more skilled than I am at listening to audiobooks, obviously, but that is a series I would not dare listen to on audio, because there are some books that I love that I can just read and skim, and they go real fast, and I'm reading for the plot and it's fun. I'm having a good time. They're entertaining. Malazan is not one of those. It requires my concentration. It really does. And there's so many layers in what's going on there, and it's rich and it's deep. You can read it on just that more surface level if you want. That's there too. But for me, maybe I'll get better at it now that I'm finally trying an audiobook. But I wouldn't dare listen to Malazan on audio, because I'd be scared of missing so much. But
right. Well, it was funny because I did do Memories of Ice on audio, which is I think why it was. I had like the trade paperback of like
the tiny print,
the tiny print, and like it was at the time selling for like $100, and like there's something about touching $100 book with your hands, that kind of scares me. And so,
Memories of Ice, mass market paperback or trade?
Trade.
Oh, the trade. Okay,
trade.
Which is no longer being, sorry. So mass market is one with the tiny print.
Oh, it's so tiny.
Almost unreadable for me now. But the trade paperbacks are selling for $100.
They were at the time. I don't know where they're at now. I think literally Mike's Read Along created a shortage on the market where they just started going for, I don't know if I can lay that at Mike's feet. I know we can lay Long Price Quartet at Alan's feet. We can blame him for that.
Long price profit. Yes.
Long price profit. But there was certain things and elements where like there would be a character who would show up in Memories of Ice, and I'd be wondering, from my perspective as a reader, why is this character here? What purpose are they serving? And they wouldn't do much for 70%. They pop in, and then all of a sudden they're pivotal to the story at the end, and you understand why they're pivotal. But when me as a reader, I still have trouble reconciling that first 70% and cycling back and understanding that no, they needed to be here in order to get to this point where they became an important character.
Yeah.
And I
can even give you examples of characters who become more important later in the series, or even there's a very tiny minor character in The House of Chains, book 4, the one you're going to read next if you read it. Minor character there who you would not necessarily even remember, who becomes very important in the sequel series, the Witness trilogy.
Okay.
At least in The God Is Not Willing. So yeah, that happens in Malazan, where there's just this vast cast of characters. It happens.
So are you a Kruppa fan?
I love Krupp. Yes, I am a Krupp fan. I have no problems with Krupp. I know there are certain beloved friends of ours, Alan, who
I like Krupp.
Who have their problems with Krupp. Even AP, by the way, I think he's on the record as saying the first time he read Gardens of the Moon, he did not like Krupp. But on his read through with me, he's become a Krupp fan. So he's in our camp. Yeah.
So I've got a question for you, because if I remember somebody saying this, and I don't know how factual it was. Now I know that Malazan was based off of a D&D campaign or a D&D style tabletop game,
GURPS.
correct?
Yeah, initially they did do D&D, but they moved quickly to GURPS. Yeah.
Okay, GURPS. I've never heard of this one, but was Krupp a player character?
Yeah,
And
he was, I believe, now AP would know the answer right away. I believe that Krupp was Steven Eriksson's character. Yes.
Okay. So see, that's kind of cool. I like how he kind of waxes political or poetically, and just kind of, he's always kind of dramatic and, oh, like poor Krupp, and I like that.
Yeah, actually, now that I said that, I do remember Steven Eriksson in one of the conversations I can't remember if it was on AP's channel or mine, but at one, or even if it was even maybe not recorded while we were just chatting, but he did mention once that he literally wore a like a bandana or something that he had. You know how Krupp is always like dabbing himself with he would enact that while he was doing the role playing. So he had that prop and was using it, while they were doing the game, I think. So yeah. So definitely Steven Eriksson's character. Yeah.
One of my favorite Krupp moments is in Memories of Ice. I will say that it's where he gets pinned down, and then you just find out that like Krupp is just kind of awesome with the ladies.
Yeah, he has his charms. He has his charms.
But like he's terrified about it, and he's trying to wiggle out of it. And I loved that aspect of that story. Like that particularly comes to mind when I think of that character.
Oh, fun. Yeah. He plays an interesting role in some subsequent books, and he even appears in one of Ian Esslemont's books in Orb, Scepter, Throne. So, and it's kind of cool to see Esslemont's take on Krupp, which is very similar, but also, it's going to be inevitably slightly different. So it's cool to have this created world by these two people and have them mostly take on different arcs and stuff, but there are threads that cross over and inform each other. And it's kind of cool when you see, oh, this is Esslemont's take on this character, and that happened in reverse too. There's a character called, I think Iron Bars was one that Esslemont essentially created for Return of the Crimson Guard, or one of the Crimson Guard narratives anyway. And he's a character that Eriksson ended up writing into his books later on. So
okay. Yeah. So one of the questions I've always had about Esslemont and Eriksson, and you're fully caught up, correct?
I've read all the books in all the Malazan books, period, except
that are out so far,
except for one, which is I'm waiting on for AP and I to have our Dust with Dreams chat, and then Crippled God. I've read Crippled God before, which is book 10 of Malazan Book of the Fallen. The one book I haven't read yet is Assail, which is the final book in Novels of the Malazan Empire by Ian Esslemont. There are 6 books.
Okay.
And that's the concurrent series with Malazan Book of the Fallen. So the only book is Assail. Yeah.
So I know Alan is very critical on Return of the Crimson Guard. I believe that's the one he's very critical on.
Yeah, that's book two of Novels of the Malazan Empire. Yeah.
So from a prose perspective, are Eriksson and Esslemont like comparable, or do they each have their own kind of authorial voice that is very distinctive?
Oh, they definitely have their own voices. You need to, if you ever do read Esslemont, first thing to understand is this is his take on the Malazan world, and he's a different writer from Eriksson. I do think they have, because of the role-playing games, this is me talking, not them, but my take is, because of the role-playing games, I do think they have a shared humor, which is something that I love. They have a shared humor that is a bit mischievous. There are a lot of inside jokes that if you're a Malazan fan, you get, but there are some that I think are just for the two of them even. But there is a shared humor there. But other than that, they are their own writers. I will say that Esslemont is one of the very best authors I've ever read in terms of establishing atmosphere in a book. Okay. He's brilliant at this.
I love atmosphere.
Every book in Novels of the Malazan Empire, and they have very distinct atmospheres because they have different settings. Every single book has really just stuck with me because of how good he is at writing atmosphere and putting you in there. And there's one book in there, Blood and Bone, that has a jungle setting. And there are people who have commented on APs and my discussion about this book who said, I've been to those jungles and it felt exactly what he wrote in that book, just transported me back there. I mean, it was
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good at that. It struck me right when I read Night of Knives, which has this, for me, fantastic opening that really just establishes the tone of the book right away. So Esslemont is brilliant at that. Absolutely brilliant.
That's great to hear. Because, one of my favorite genres, new genres that I really enjoy, is, I was mentioning earlier, fantasy Westerns, because Western has an atmosphere, it's got a feel to it. And in order to inject fantasy elements into it, you've got to make sure that you're still honoring the Western roots. Yeah. And the blowing of the tumble, like when you think Western, you think of like that hazy day with the blowing tumbleweeds and like crabgrass and horses, and so like you've got this image in your mind and an atmosphere. And then another is gaslamp fantasy, which could be kind of attributed as Ripper era London, kind of at night, where you've kind of got that haze and you think in like more blacker, grayer tones, but with like pops of light from the gas lamps and things of that nature. And probably clinking clothes, or like, maybe just the tap of a cane on a cobble, things of that nature, where like, if you're going to use something call it gas lamp fantasy, there's got to be a certain atmospheric aspect to it. So atmosphere is very important in fantasy. Oh, yeah. And that actually intrigues me that Esslemont is very good at. You're making me want to read Malazan again.
Oh yeah,
and I don't have room in the next few months, but maybe.
Well, hopefully you'll have a long life where you'll be able to get to it. You also like nautical stuff. I will say that the best naval battle I have ever read in fantasy is in Esslemont's third book of the novels of the Malazan Empire.
Really?
Stonewielder. Yeah, it is absolutely the most well-realized naval battle I've ever read. It's just brilliant stuff. So yeah, I mean, he's really good at that. And his books tend to be more, if you want to talk about differences between Esslemont and Erikson, one would be that I think somebody coming to Esslemont for the first time might actually say, oh, okay, this is more like what I read most of the time when I read fantasy. Whereas Erikson's books tend to be, I mean, just Erikson is a genius. He does stuff that I think most writers just cannot do. And he does there's some, Alan calls philosophy in there.
I thought Alan called it navel gazing.
He calls it that too. That is not nearly as present in Esslemont's books. Esslemont would be, in some ways, for many fantasy readers, traditional fantasy readers, I would say that Esslemont might be more accessible in some ways than Erikson even. That's just my take, but I think that's a fair characterization.
Well, I know Joanna has loved her journey through
and Jimmy and Alan too is mostly a fan of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, as much as we pick on him for his tastes. I mean, Mike, of course, has put on pause his read of the series, but
I think his reasons are valid.
Oh yeah, I have no problem with it at all. But there were certain books that he definitely enjoyed a lot, I think. So it is a series that offers a bit of everything, I think.
Now, have you read Realm of the Underlings yet?
So I've read Farseer and I've read Live Ship Traders. Okay. I have not gone beyond the first two trilogies though. And it is something I will be doing this year. I was thinking it would happen earlier, but now it's looking more like mid-year, maybe even later in the year. But I will eventually, for sure, finish Realm of the Elderlings. I'm very eager to do it, actually. It's just a matter of I'm planning to read them along with AP.
Okay.
So, like we've done with Malazan, but we also have to finish Malazan, and we're doing Jenny Wirtz's
Alliance of Light.
Yeah, well, it's the Wars of Light and Shadow.
Wars of Light and Shadow. Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to squeeze in some Hobb in there as well at some point. But
I've got the first 3 Wirtz books. I've actually got.
Okay.
I've got To Ride Hell's Chasm. Yep. I've got the
I'm
first
reading that right now. Yeah.
I've got the first 3 Wars of that. For some reason, that's one of the names I can't get to stick in my brain.
Wars of Light and Shadow. Yeah.
That one. I got the first 3 of that. I've got her Storm. It's a trilogy that she released in the 90s.
Oh, okay. I don't know it. The only other one I know is the Empire trilogy that she wrote with Raymond Feist.
I've got that one as well.
Okay.
I loved the original. Alan's wrong. Pug is not a dumb name for a character. But I'm just teasing him. Yeah, I love Rift War, and so I've got the Empire, and then I'm going to kick myself when I get home because I've had this trilogy on my shelf. I've got a lot of words that I need to get to. Is I guess what I'm trying to say here.
Yep. Yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm reading right now To Ride Hell's Chasm, and going to have a talk with Janny Wirtz and Joanna and Blaze from Under the Radar Books.
Nice.
Actually, that's going to be on the 11th. So I'm very excited for that. Yeah.
That'll be an exciting discussion.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Janny is another author that I did meet when I was at ICFA.
Right. Joanna was saying that she got a signed copy of To Ride Hell's Chasm while there, and then met Stephen Donaldson.
Yep. That's right. I was actually present when Joanna got that signed copy. In fact, when we were there getting it, I don't remember how it came about exactly, but she had gotten a copy of the book because she wanted to buy it. And then somebody mentioned, or somehow we figured out that some of the copies were signed and others were not, and they were all the same price. So then I think I went back and got her a signed copy, and then she got the signed copy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I was there anyway when she got that. Yeah.
It's really interesting from kind of cycling back to the publishing aspect of To Ride Hell's Chasm. That trade paperback was the copy that I have was put out by a press that is no longer in service as of 2007. But I think all of those copies are, I don't know if there's like a surplus that has just been kind of sitting.
I don't know.
But they're all a really decent price, but the formatting hasn't changed. The art hasn't changed. The size hasn't changed. Yeah. So I don't know if it was just moved to another press, or if, like I said, there's just a surplus of it. I've heard that it's a hidden gem.
I'm enjoying it so far. Yeah.
Because I heard about it from Bryce from Shelf Centered.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Bryce. Yeah.
Yeah, he had read it.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, and he's had some nice exchanges with Janny Wirtz on Twitter, I believe, as well. Yeah. So I think he said that he even mentioned that she sent him a jar of honey because she raises honey. She makes honey with.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. She's really cool. I mean, she rides horses and she makes honey. And
Robin Hobb's sort of similar.
Okay.
She's out in Alaska, I think, and
Washington State now, I think.
Oh, is she in Washington State now? She'll post pictures on Twitter, and it'll be this little slice of life thing of just like this picture of like a leaf like laying in a pond or a caterpillar, and then she'll wax poetic about it and make it as a way of appreciating life and appreciating what you have. And she does this all the time on Twitter.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that is very powerful. That kind of shines through within the realm of the Elderlings with this, analysis of Fitz and of, the Vezerits within the Lightship Traders is, a lot of these people have so much and they don't even realize it. They don't stop to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Fitz's situation isn't the best.
No.
But it also, as a young man, he is he's missing a lot of the magic of what he
Mhm.
could have if he had just stopped and analyzed how his life was actually going.
I think that's most people in the world. There is wonder all around us, and I think most of the time we don't really perceive it because of maybe it's something we take for granted, or we just haven't trained ourselves to see it and appreciate it. But it is something that I feel like fantasy is so brilliant at opening our eyes to. I remember distinctly as a kid reading Lord of the Rings and then going to a real forest and feeling the wonder of it in an increased way, which I wouldn't have perceived if I hadn't read about Lothlorien, right?
Right.
So I think that stories have the capacity to open our eyes to the beauty and the wonder of the world around us as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's kind of one of the things that I love about Hobb is each subsequent trilogy with Fitz in it is a time jump.
Yeah.
And he's older and he's more retrospective, and he looks back on his life and he thinks about, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I become who I am now? And what could I have done differently? Does it matter if I could have done anything differently? Because it's too late to change it now. But it's fascinating watching Fitz mature throughout his life and going on this journey and fighting for what he believes in and fighting for what he wants,
Yeah.
and kind of being buffeted by things that are outside of his control. And there's so many beautiful things. Like, I know a lot of people are hit and miss on Assassin's Quest.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's this long book that really follows Fitz being introspective, trying to discover himself. And that's kind of the genius of it. And if that's not your thing, I understand readers not enjoying that.
Right.
But I got tongue tied. It kind of leads to Fitz understanding who he is, what he wants, and what he needs to do in order to achieve his goals. Because he has a lot of false starts. He has a lot of indecision.
Yep.
He, has a lot of rage going into that final book of the trilogy that he really...
Yeah.
Understandably, absolutely, but he needs to understand he needs to basically go on a quest.
Yeah.
And it's in the title of the book that it's a quest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people mistake quest for adventure.
Uh-huh.
Adventures are big battles and horse racing, or sword fighting, or in Fitz's case, axe fighting.
Yeah.
But a quest is a little bit slower. It's something that has false starts. It has dead ends. It has mistakes. Adventures can have that too, but it's not quite as inherent.
Well, I think maybe too, a quest is both external, physical. You're going on a journey somewhere, but it's also very much internal.
Yes.
It's what's happening in here. Whereas an adventure is mostly just external. So the transformation that you undergo as a result of the physical journey is as much a part of the story as the physical journey itself. So yeah, that's what's happening there. And I love that stuff. I never had a problem with Assassin's Quest. If anything, I would say Assassin's Apprentice started a bit slow for me. And it was a slow burn. And I absolutely loved it by the end. But it just took a bit of time. I think she took her time doing some world building and some character building and all of that, which is what a lot of great authors do. So I have, no problems with that. I've experienced something similar with Live Ship Traders, where I felt like, okay, she's giving me a sense of this world now, and I need to just relax and get to know these people who I'm becoming more and more invested in. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So cool. Well, Andrew, I don't want to take too much of your time because I know you have a little person to take care of or help take care of. Two little people, but one especially little.
Yeah.
But this has been a real joy for me. It's been a lot of fun having the opportunity to talk with you, to get to know you a little bit more. There are some beautiful people that we get to interact with here, and I'm very privileged to have this opportunity, really, to talk with you. And I hope that folks out there are going to enjoy this conversation. I'll let you have a last word, though.
No, I really appreciate you having me on. I've been, you know, a long time admirer of your channel and just of you as an individual. I greatly respect, you know, your insights and your views on, you know, just fantasy and what you do for people who are just looking for an escape and want to go on a journey. And it's just been so fun being a part of the BookTube community.
Yeah.
There's no community quite like it out there. I believe Mike's got a saying that we're kind of just the best corner of the internet.
Yeah.
There's just so many lovely people, and it's just great getting to know and hang out with everybody. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's the honor and pleasure. It's all here. And thank you everybody for listening to this. Go check out Andrew's Wizardly Reads. And I, of course, will have a link to that channel in the description, or you can just search for it on in YouTube as Andrew's Wizardly Reads. Thank you once again, Andrew. This has been a delight.
Thank you.
All right. Till next time, everybody.